Practice Test 8, Math No Calculator, pages 38 through 45 of the PDF off of collegeboard.org. In the equation above, what is the value of x? Remember that for each one of these x terms, there's an invisible 1 sitting in front of it. So we can combine the like terms by adding the coefficients for each x, and then just adding and subtracting the numbers. We move the x terms over, we have 4x minus 5 is equal to 7. We can add 5 to both sides, we have 4x is equal to 12, and this becomes x is equal to 3 when we divide both sides by 4. The answer is D. Number 2, we have a graph where we spend 1 minute and we travel 2 feet. 1 minute, 2 feet, 1 minute, 2 feet. So 2 feet per every 1 minute. This is the slope of this line. 2 over 1, or just 2. And there's 2 possible results that have a slope of 2. These don't. The difference is the intercept. So this line crosses the y-axis at 0. That allows you to rule out D, and A is the best choice. Number 3, they want to know P in terms of the other variables. So we just solve it in reverse. We multiply both sides by 6. We get 6e is equal to 0 plus 4m plus p. Or I suppose that's O, not 0. So then we can subtract O and subtract 4m from both sides. And we get 6e minus O minus 4m is equal to p, which is A. Several different rules of geometry can be used here. So first of all, this is a linear pair, which means it adds up to 180. So it's 66 degrees, this angle, which means that this angle is going to give you a sum of 180 if you add it with these other two. So that means it's 83 degrees, which means that this angle here is also 83 degrees because they are vertical angles. And because TR and TU are equal to each other, these are base angles of an isosceles triangle. So you can take 180 minus 114 and divide it by 2 to find those base angles. They're going to be 33 degrees each. So to figure out x, we're going to go back and use the idea that 180 minus 83 minus 33, whatever's left, is our answer. This is going to be 64 degrees. C. The width of a rectangular dance floor is W feet. The length is 6 feet longer than its width, so W plus 6. W plus 6. They want to know the perimeter. So we can just add all 4 sides together and we get 4W, and then 6 plus 6 is 12. 4W plus 12. B. Number 6 is about a system of inequalities. And if it was me, I would go ahead and subtract 1 from both sides on this bottom equation. So it becomes 2x minus 1 is greater than 4. Then I can chain these to say that y is greater than 2x minus 1, which is greater than 4. So the only thing we know for sure is that y has to be bigger than 4, since it's bigger than 2x minus 1, which is bigger than 4. For number 7, you could move the 4 over, square both sides, solve it like a quadratic, and get 2 answers, and then try to plug them both back in and figure out which one works. But since there's only a couple numbers here, I would probably just guess and check. Plug in the numbers, see what works. For example, if you plug in a negative 1, you end up with 6 on the left and 2 on the right. Versus if you plug in a 5, you get the square root of 16 is 4, plus 4 is 8, which is equal to 5 plus 3. So B checks out. For number 8, if we want to set this up as a fraction, we can just put f on top and g on bottom. And you might notice that they don't really divide easily, so we can look at a different form of f. For example, what if we factor out an x? Well, then we get x times x squared minus 9. And notice that this is a difference of squares. So we can rewrite this as x times x plus 3 times x minus 3. Then if we factor the bottom, so negative 3 times 1, negative 3 plus 1, it looks like this. And we're told that x has to be bigger than 3, so you can't really say that either one of these is equal to 0, and therefore let's just divide it out. X minus 3 divided by x minus 3. Gone. What's left? X times x plus 3 divided by x plus 1. D. So the equation of a circle is a starting point for number 9. This tells us that our center is going to be 6, negative 5. We take the 6 down here and the 5, and they're pretty much inverse. We also know that our radius is going to be 4, because that's 16 square root. So that's our center and our radius. Now we know point P, and the coordinate's 10, negative 5. So what's the distance from the center? Notice the y-coordinate is the same. The x-coordinate is up 4. So if we want a diameter, we have to go in the same direction, the opposite direction. So it's going to be down 4. It's going to be 2, negative 5, or A. So number 10, I like to write these formally as systems of equations. For example, we have tenths with 2 people, and tenths with 4 people is a total of 202 people. And then add up the number of tenths, and the total is 60. And you can solve for x and y, and they specifically want to know 2-person tenths, so that's x. So I might multiply both equations by a negative 4, or excuse me, the entire bottom equation by a negative 4, like this. So then I'll just erase this second equation here and add straight down. So I have negative 2x, the y's are gone, is equal to negative 38. So x is equal to 19. Number 11, we can start with the factors. Here at negative 3 requires a factor of x plus 3, which rules out c and d, and x minus 2, which doesn't rule anything out, and here it's just going to have to be something like x or x squared, which doesn't rule anything out. So it comes down to typical behavior of polynomials when they cross the x-axis at x equals 0. And it has to do with whether the highest, largest term is even or odd. This one's going to be x cubed, and this one's going to be x to the 4th once you multiply out. The odd ones, like an x cubed, would look like this, because they cross over the axis at x equals 0. But the even ones, like x squared and others, not a great drawing here, but are going to be symmetrical. Right here shows that we're looking at an even degree polynomial. B is the best choice. Lots of options for number 12. I like cross-multiplying these two original equations, or fractions I should say. This gives us 4a is equal to b, and if we just divide both sides by a, we get b over a is equal to 4. Done. For 13, we're going to use the slope formula, which is just the change in y over the change in x. And remember that x is typically going to be time. So on the bottom here, we're looking at from 2013 or 2000 to 2013. So we write it like this. We're traveling 13 years. On the top, we went from 1.9 to 4, or I guess vice versa. That's why we're doing it this way. And in the end, we get a negative 2.1 over 13. If I wanted to get rid of that decimal, I could just move it over 1 and move this one over 1, and suddenly I have 21 over 130. And let me bring down the negative. So A is wrong because it's positive. B and D have the wrong number, 19. C is going to be the best choice, just looking at the slope alone. For 14, I would rewrite the second equation here as y is equal to 5x minus 8, just moving those two terms over. Then we have two equations that say y equals something, so those two somethings can be set equal to each other. And if I move over the 5x in the 8, I'm going to be looking at x minus 1 and x minus 1, which they both have a solution of 1. So there's exactly one solution. So this is about function notation. To plug in a 0 for h of x, I will substitute like this. So 2 minus 0 is 0, minus 1 is negative 1. So it's going to be 1 minus a negative 1, or just 1 plus 1, which is 2. 16, no more multiple choice. A has to be positive, so I'm guessing there's going to be two solutions and one will be negative. If we look at factoring this, we can say that x squared plus x minus 12 equals 0, we can look at what times what is negative 12. That adds up to 1, because there's a 1 here. So we're probably going to use 4 and 3. X plus 4 times x minus 3 is the factored form of that. So my solutions are negative 4 or 3. The only one that's positive is 3. There's your answer. 17, we're adding together two polynomials, so we just combine like terms. Our x squared terms, when we add them together, give us 1x squared. The x terms give us 8x, so plus 8x. And then we have 31 minus 8, which gives us plus 23. So here's a 1, an 8, and a 23. That's what we add together. So our answer is 32. 18 asks us to solve for y, which is very convenient because this is already set up for elimination. If we add all three columns straight down, the x's cancel out. We're left with 4y is equal to 6. So we just divide both sides by 4, and we get y is equal to 6 over 4. We could probably reduce this to 3 over 2, or we could write it as 1.5. They would accept either one. 19, 2 new employees hired each quarter. And this is about x quarters. So that's our slope. It's going to be 2x. And we started with 8 employees, so plus 8. Y is equal to 2x plus 8. The b value is going to be 8. Number 20 is actually a proportion problem. This arc is 2/5 of the circumference, and then this angle is x degrees out of 360 degrees. So you could cross multiply to say 5x is equal to 720. There's other ways to solve it too. Any way you do it, x is equal to 144 degrees.